And one thing that I didn't expect to see at the end of the pandemic or at all this year is labor starting to take back their power by realizing their worth. I think that's a fantastic thing. And it's got a lot of people who exploit labor, who are used to paying labor terrible wages and treating them terribly. Well, it's got them getting a little salty, and I'm here for it. One example is a restaurant owner in Las Vegas who recently cried to a newspaper that he's tired. He's so sick and tired of having to tell prospective workers how much they'll be making if they take a job with him. So they ask, okay, look, I know you want me for the job, but okay, what's the pay? And this guy's like, how dare you? How dare you ask me what I'm going to pay you for your labor? But wait, that's the most sensible question. I've never really understood. And maybe it's because I think in common sense, I've never understood why you're not supposed to ask, okay, during an interview, for example, well, okay, what should I expect to get paid? I mean, what are you going to pay me for in exchange for my labor? And then you kind of realize that it's one of those things where it's like, they don't want you to ask because they don't want you to try to know the value of your work, the value of your labor. They want you to basically, they want to exploit you by paying you as little as possible. And so that's the thing that, again, that never sat right with me. And I didn't necessarily know the reason until I sat down and thought about it and was like, well, of course they don't want to pay you. Of course they want to pay you as little as possible. And they don't want you asking questions. That's why they don't want you discussing salary with your fellow workers and all that stuff. And so now, in an interview, getting back to the story, with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Stephen Kim, director of operations, the Island Sushi Grill in the South Point Hotel Casino, claims that workers are no longer willing to take the jobs at his restaurant because they're making too much money from enhanced unemployment. Ah, yes, of course. Blame the unemployment. What they're all doing. In fact, here's what he said, quote, "How much do you pay?" That's one of the first questions to come out of their mouth. When they open the economy, they should have decreased the amount of unemployment. Or maybe you could actually raise wages to attract workers. Like the free market tells you to do. And see, if there's a bit of a labor shortage, well then maybe, or a shortage of people who want to work for your crappy wage, then maybe you should up your wage or offer some benefits, to attract the workers that you want or need. Now, of course, they say, well, the government's paying people too much through unemployment. You realize that unemployment is temporary, right? And also the enhanced benefits are as a result of coronavirus, the pandemic, and that a lot of people don't go back to work or are not going back to work and don't feel comfortable because of the virus that's still happening because people haven't gotten vaccinated yet. And I'm going to share some horror stories later on, of course, from a survey of how workers were treated during the pandemic and one reason why they wouldn't want to go back. But he's not the only one. Oh, there's more. Gino Ferraro, who owns Ferraro's Italian restaurant and wine bar, similarly told the Review Journal that a major problem he's encountering right now is that, quote, everyone wants more money, no matter what position you hire it for in the restaurant. Can you imagine being salty when people are like, I can't believe you want more money? Yeah, we all want more money. Isn't that the whole point? Isn't that the whole point of working? To be able to get money? I know, weird. How dare they? Oh my God. And it turns out that, by the way, nobody wants to be exploited anymore for crap wages. But again, look at the entitlement from a lot of these CEOs who are used to being able to pay whatever crap wages they wanted to pay. And of course, to allow the people who do work hard, to people who work on the floor, and get regularly abused by customers. I mean, again, the pandemic, as I've shared the story before, it actually brought some of the worst people out to those restaurants. There was a report back in 2020, and it was a report from One Fair Wage, and it surveyed about 1,600 food service workers between October 20th and November 10th 2020 from 5 different states. And they found, well, their findings were not surprising. They found that not only servers had received piss poor tips, they also had been harassed for enforcing social distancing and mask wearing, according to NPR. So the people, again, most people stayed home during the lockdowns, during the pandemic, but the people who showed up, well, they didn't wear masks. They were the people who didn't tip. And again, they're the ones who would basically encourage or tell people to remove their masks so they could decide how much they will tip. And if you didn't do that, or if you argued with them, well, first, if you actually told them to adhere to the standards, which, by the way, you shouldn't be out there doing that. If you're a server, that shouldn't be your job to not only, say that, hey, you have to wear a mask, but also to get punished for it. It's not their job for that. It's really not their job. Now, in some situations, by the way, the food service employees endured masculine harassment, in which restaurant goers request the server remove their mask to gauge how much they should be tipped. We were really shocked with how horrific the situation truly is, President of One Fair Wage, Saru Jayaraman, said in an interview with Weekend Edition. But I think the most horrific thing that, honestly, all of us who were involved in the study were all blown away by was a huge increase in hostility and sexual harassment in the workplace. The study, titled "Take Off Your Masks So I Know How Much to Tip You," found that more than 80% of food industry workers seen a decline in tips, while 40% claim sexual harassment from customers has increased. So now, one rule here is, if you can't afford to tip, then don't go out to the restaurant. And no, I'm not saying that the tipping system is great. No, it is broken as hell. But as it stands right now, if you can't afford to tip, then you can't afford to go out and eat. I'm just saying. All right? Because again, they rely on this. In fact, 60% of workers who rely on tip said they're hesitant when it came to enforcing pandemic protocols. They also found that 44% of workers surveyed reported that at least one or more of their coworkers had contracted the virus, so it's actually much more dangerous. 84% reported being within 6 feet of at least one person who was not wearing a mask during each shift. 33% claimed that they're in dangerous close quarters, with 30 more maskless guests each shift. So another reason why people didn't want to come back to work is because it's dangerous work. Not only dangerous, worried about the virus, but also the harassment, the poor pay, the terrible tips, all of that. And not only that, but they also were not protected by their employers. In fact, more than 1/3 of workers reported that their employer had not conducted a mandatory training on COVID safety protocols, and 70% of workers say their employers are not consistent when following measures to keep guests and staff safe. And you wonder why people are not scrambling to take your shit job at your shit wages. Remember, the tip minimum wage in 1991 was a total of $2.13 an hour. And in that same minimum wage today hasn't changed. It's still $2.13 an hour. That's insane. Why do we have a system like this? It is broken as hell. And understand that this pandemic has exposed just how little Americans care about the people who work as hard to bring our food, and how, and how just poorly thought of we think of these people and treat them. We treat them terribly. And for what? For so little. And they're sick of it. And now they're actually able to fight back. And these bosses, they don't get it. And they're crying. All you have is CEO and billionaire tears. And their cups runneth over. And they think that this is going to be over once the enhanced unemployment ends in September. But I hope they're wrong. I think you can't put this movement back in the bottle. Workers are finally getting their voices heard. They're fighting for their wages. They're fighting for, workers' rights, a fair wage for fair and honest work. That's all they need. I think it's great that this is happening. that they're finally fighting back, and I'm here for it 100%. So, cry more, CEOs. I drink your tears. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.